This is Gavin, and we will start out by speaking about the planned visits of King Charles and President Joe Biden and the effect of imperialism and as well as the subservient bootlicking for imperialists by the West Brits. Go ahead, Gavin.
Well, the first visit would be of Biden. It was confirmed the other week that he will be coming next Tuesday week, 4 days. He's going throughout Ireland, including the occupied 6 counties. Now, the purpose of his visit is to mark the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Belfast Agreement, which completed the pacification process of the Provisional Éire, a once revolutionary group which had been infiltrated at the very, very highest levels, going back to the beginning of the 80s at the very least, when Adams and Co. took over. And as we both know, 3 years later, in 86, Ruairi Ó'Bradaigh, a visionary, he predicted the current situation that we're in now. That there would be an internal 6-county settlement. It's actually there's a very well-known video of him at the 1986 Ardèche, and it's basically like he predicted the future. There was other interviews from the 90s, and this was before the Provisional Éire ceasefire in 97. I remember his interview with him on Channel 4 News. He was a visionary, there was no other way to describe him. And, at the moment, we have the neo-colonial 26 county state, pro-British, and since the dawn of the 21st century, it's grown to accommodate US imperialism as well. And with Biden coming over, I would expect more of a push for the 26 counties to join NATO. Now, the likes of Iraq knows at the moment that the public opinion isn't there for that to happen. NATO members have to spend a minimum of 2% of their GDP on defence funding, and the public opinion just is not there for the 26 counties. And Faraka is very, very well aware. He would love for the 26 counties to be a NATO member. So I've been thinking the past while, would there be some sort of false flag Russian cyber attack on 26 county infrastructure that could be used, as a propaganda push for a referendum on the so-called neutrality of the 26 county state? And obviously, to mark the significant anniversary, 25th anniversary of the Belfast Agreement, Biden will also normalise British occupation in the north. I believe he has Irish descent. His family hailed from Mayo originally, so there'll be comparisons there. I'd imagine 26 county press, who are very pro-Biden, I'd imagine they'd draw some sort of comparison with Kennedy, or even to Obama, because, Obama had the money Gael. I think, he had descended from there.
Somewhere in Offaly it was.
Yes.
That's where the Dunhams were from.
And I do believe with Charles Windsor, his visit is the end of April, I think. Now, this is a significant visit. It's not the first time he's visited the 26 counties, but it is his first time visiting as head of state. Previously, he was just the prince. Now he's the king. So it's actually the most significant royal visit since 2011, when his mother, the then Queen, visited. So, again, that will be normalisation, what will be the terms used? We have to move on from the past, Despite the fact that Britain still occupies the 6 counties, still interns Irish Republicans, harasses Irish Republicans, they've no plans on leaving, the triple lock system is ingrained into the Good Friday Agreement. Even at the 26 counties, we have effectively an MI5 agent as the head of the 26.
Drew Harris.
Yes.
Former RUC assistant chief.
So Oh yeah, and as next Monday is Easter. I'd imagine the month of April, both the 26 county media and the British media, it will be full on with normalisation of
anti-Republican excrement as usual.
So, there'll be a lot of condemnation of the, let's say, what were called dissident Republicans, despite the fact we never dissented from any Republican.
It's always the Free Staters who dissent from the Republican line.
The real dissident Republicans are the ones sitting in Leinster House and Stormont.
As always, same old story since Fine Gael. But on a few things, you said about the British infiltration of the Provisionals. I would recommend that the audience read Killing for Britain and the Dirty War. And you also mentioned the desire for the 26 county establishment, the Free Staters, to not only join the Commonwealth, but also joining NATO. And if you listened to RTE the month after the special military operation began, the way Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were talking, it was like radio Nazi. And do you know what the last visit to Ireland, as the royals would put it, was before Elizabeth in 2011? Do you know what the last one was? No. King George to open up Stormont, and they still classified as a visit to Ireland. And I hate this perception that Biden is pro-Ireland. He is for the Good Friday Agreement. That is basically a later version of Sunningdale, and Sunningdale failed in the 70s. So why try it again? Because 2 million people voted in the 90s after they were war weary. And on the occupation of the six, I've got a few interesting statistics here. There are 20,000 British security personnel in the 6 counties. That is, when you consider the territory, the area of the 6 counties, that is 1.4 per square kilometre, 3.6 per square mile, and 1 Brit occupier per 94.7 people in the 6 counties. And at the peak of the Iraq and Afghan wars, there were more British soldiers per capita in Ireland than there were in either of those places.
Yeah, and obviously the normalisation, ultralisation, and criminalisation, that those are strategies first implemented in the 70s by the British government, and they're still obviously being implemented today. Like, most people are completely unaware that there's still British combat troops stationed in the north of Ireland, like heavily armed. I think the last count of this just count the British Army was, I know I said there's 20,000 security personnel, but as far as I know, the Army amount is 5,000. And if you take the Free State Army, there's, I believe, 12,000 soldiers in this. I don't think there's more than 12,000 soldiers. So basically, it's like half the size of the 26 county army is a British Army contingent in the north, and most people are, completely unaware of this, and quite clearly they've no intentions of going anywhere either.
They certainly don't.
No, not at all. They'll maintain basically a British hegemony in obviously this part of Europe, where they need to maintain influence over their closest neighbour.
You wouldn't be familiar with the geography of East Belfast?
I know it'd be predominantly loyalists now.
See if you get the bus from Albert Bridge Road to Hollywood. You pass Strand Strand, yes, Strand Town RUC station, Knocknagonny RUC station, Hollywood British Army Barracks, and Hollywood RUC station.
Yeah.
And not only is that a short drive, it's a short walk.
Yeah.
And people say we're not under occupation. That is nonsense. And a few other things. People pretend that the Good Friday Agreement improved the lives of working class Irish people. That is utter nonsense. There are 900,729 in poverty in the Free State. That's according to the CSO. And there are 302,987 in poverty in the 6 counties, and that's Stormont's Department of Communities. That means there's 1,203,716 in poverty in Ireland, and there are 5,133 homeless in the 6 counties. That is according to Homeless Connect. And there are 11,754 homeless in the Free State, which includes 3,431 children, and that's the Free State's Department of Housing. That means 16,887 people are homeless in Ireland. That doesn't sound like an improvement over the last quarter of the century.
No, not at all. It's grim. And, it's an all-Ireland pandemic. And I do believe, I don't know the figures offhand, I do believe there's been an increase in mental health disorders in the north of Ireland. It
has the highest rate in Europe, if not the world. And it's just increased over the last quarter of a century.
I believe there was an increase in suicides. I'm not sure. I'm sure I read that somewhere, which is obviously it's happening, and it's in Ireland-wide pandemic in the 26 counties. It's a horrendous issue.
And as I was discussing with Tony on Thursday there, in the 6 counties, during the pandemic, deprived areas were twice as likely as affluent areas to see an increase in suicides.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, if you look at the mainstream media at the moment, they're going through a phase where they're basically vindicating everyone who protested against lockdowns and mandatory jabs. And it's happening across the world. So it's not by accident. Now, it takes a lot of faith. Some people say, the government's messed up, but not every government is going to mess up. It went as it was planned.
I was about to say, not just Stormont, Leinster House, Westminster, or even DC. A lot of the representatives who were pushing that line also get generous contributions to their campaigns from big pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Moderna. As Russell Brand said, that cannot be purely coincidence that the same pattern keeps emerging.
Well, if you look back to 2009 with the so-called swine flu pandemic, there was an investigation by the Council of Europe that found that pharmaceutical corporations had an undue influence over the World Health Organization. They had a vested interest in fraudulently declaring a pandemic as the profit from vaccine sales. And effectively the same script was played out from 2020 to 2022. The difference being with technological advantages from 2009, the Great Reset agenda has been implemented.
And King Charles is for that as well.
It's the one who launched it on behalf of Mr. Schwab.
The World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yes, the famous line, or the infamous line, I should say. Because unless one happens to be a massive believer in coincidence, I'm sure you're aware that in October 19th, 2019, this was a full month before the first confirmed case of COVID in Wuhan. The World Economic Forum, in conjunction with the Johns Hopkins University and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, ran Event 201, a simulation of a global pandemic, which could only be resolved by giving greater power to corporations of our public life worldwide, which by pure coincidence is what's completely outlined in the Great Reset, which was launched less than a year later during the very similar pandemic as to what was outlined in Event 201. So unless people are fairly big believers in coincidences, actually shows that 2020 to 2022 was planned entirely, and as was the switch on media focus to the conflict in Ukraine last February, which is a handy cover for the inflation which was caused by the lockdown measures. Like I try to avoid using the term the cost of living crisis. I think a more accurate term is the cost of lockdown crisis, and it was planned, this was completely planned. Obviously great more dependence on the corporate class, which has integrated even further with public policy worldwide over the past 2 years. One thing we have taken encouragement from during the 2 years of the lockdown experiment, it wasn't easy to come out and say, look, I'm against this, I'm against mandatory jabs. There was a lot of slander, there was a lot of, labelling far right, the popular one, far right, fascist. And I'm still confused as to how exactly protesting against,
Merchants, corporate power and state power fascism.
I'm still wondering, how is far right to protest against, pharmaceutical joints with a record of unethical business practice. But as I'm saying, one thing I have taken encouragement from is a key part of the Great Reset is of the digital currency, a cashless society. That gives an unprecedented level of control to the government, corporates, access. But more people are speaking out. And like even people who are fully on board with lockdowns, like even they say, "Oh no, I'm against it now." Look, I know we can say it's because they supported that it's being implemented, but there's no taste, there's no public appetite for it there. I do remember AIB announced plans for 70 of its branches to go completely cashless last year, and they had to kick back on it because they had to cancel that because there was.
I thought they were doubling down.
Yeah, no, they actually they cancelled the plans, and that was brilliant. That was brilliant because if a cashless side came in, like we seen last year with the Freedom Convoy in Canada, Trudeau, a well-known World Economic Forum, young global leader, like Varadkar, he implemented emergency legislation which hadn't been implemented in Canada since the Second World War, and what it entailed was freezing the bank accounts of the protest organisers. Now, in a situation where there was a cashless society, with advantages in technology, any sort of genuine anti-establishment, like Irish Republicans in particular, it'd be incredible. We would be completely hindered, bank accounts of anyone that goes against the status quo. I get the stage, like the algorithm on Facebook says, you have a 30-day ban, because you pointed out there's neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
Yes.
With technological advances, cash goes, you could be in the situation where you're going to the shops to buy your week's worth of groceries, and it comes up.
It rejects the payment.
Yeah, your car's been declined for 30 days. You said something on Facebook we didn't like, and I know it sounds like something out of a meme, but if you went back to 2010, 2011, and you told them what was going to happen in 2020, 2021, people would probably think you were joking then, you know. As you know, people queuing up to test it to see if they were sick or not, you know, from the supposedly deadliest virus in human history, you know, using a testing method.
You've just reminded me of a few things there. SARS in the early 90s. Even the predictions at the start, COVID was never going to be as deadly as SARS, yet there wasn't this reaction back then. And another coincidence, which has been overlooked, given we now know that Dr. Anthony Fauci did do gain-of-function research and cell culture experiments. Fort Detrick, it was reported in August 2019, it was reported that Fort Detrick was closed on the grounds that a deadly bioweapon or virus could escape and basically transmit to the rest of the population. And you were saying about a cashless society. Rishi Sunak has announced plans to proceed with that. And we were talking about this, me and David Fox, on one of these video discussions, and he said one overlooked aspect of the intervention in the Northern Territory was that Australian First Nationals had basic cards which controlled their spending. They've been planning this for a very, very long time. That was in the noughties, I think, 2006, around that era. And they've just kept going. And basically that's the future that the globalists want, where basically our behaviours and our life are controlled through our spending, which they can override and reject at any time.
Yes, yeah. And just on the point about the lab in Wuhan, recently there was an intelligence report released saying that the US government believes that COVID did originate from a lab. I think it's a very, very coincidental, the timing of that release. If you look at the moment in the Persian Gulf, China has brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and they're you know, and that's major. It's a unbelievable geopolitical shift, you know, to reconcile both those powers.
I would not trust the kingdom.
Yes, yeah, because there doesn't seem to be any indication that the conflict in Yemen is stopping. But America or the United States, you know, to see Saudi Arabia shift from their sphere of influence into China's, you know, how they will react is very interesting. And I can't remember his name off. A high-ranking US military official recently said that he's expecting a war between the United States and China by 2025, 2 years away. So the lab leak, the timing that could suggest that this is to get ready to start a propaganda campaign against China to manufacture consent for a conflict, a possible conflict in 2025, which will basically be a third world war that will end all life on Earth. You know, and as well, I wrote a piece on this recently. In 2023, one thing I will be keeping an eye out for is a colour revolution attempt in Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan has been made the head of the Commonwealth of Independent States for 2021. The previous two holders of that position were Kazakhstan and Belarus.
And both attempted colour revolutions are.
Yes, and with Kazakhstan in particular, last January, that was in line with Iran's cooperation document published in 2020, which basically envisioned regime change in Kazakhstan, leading to the
liquefied natural gas.
And it would spill over into Russia as well, because it's a 7,000 kilometer land border. It's the second largest. And this year I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar attempt happening in Kyrgyzstan, because Kyrgyzstan actually borders Xinjiang province of
China.
So that could
to its east and China's west.
Yeah, and in very coincidental fashion, the last time Kyrgyzstan was headed to CIS was 2016. In that year, the East Turkestan independence, the Uyghurs, they launched a bomb attack on the Chinese embassy in Bishkek. It's a very coincidental timing. So if Kyrgyzstan was to be completely disabled and spilled over into Xinjiang, it would basically be like a domino effect, which would end up in toward destabilise the rest of China. Like we only seen recently in December, for the first time ever, the media was praising anti-lockdown protesters, but that's because
in China.
Yes, and
because it was for colour revolution.
And very, very coincidental. In January last year, January 2022, George Soros of Open Society, he gave a speech at the Hoover Institution, and he must be a fortune teller, because he basically he outlined his view as Xi Jinping being the greatest threat to open society's face, and he predicted a situation where opposition to the lockdown measures in China would turn into a mass uprising against Xi Jinping. And by pure coincidence, that's what happened for a while in
How much did the anti-lockdown protesters get from the Open Society?
Yeah, what was it? We were all secretly controlled by the far right, literally, I remember what that guy does.
But they publish their donations on their website. So is Al Georgie a conspiracy theorist as well? Was he a conspiracy theorist when he said in the camera on CBS 60 Minutes that he had no regrets or problems with his Nazist past?
Yes.
And also, on that, he's up to his old tricks. He funded groups during Maidan, and he has given donations through the open societies to the Ukrainian state since. So basically, do leopards change their spots?
That's true. And I'd imagine it's going to be a slow pace moment. I think China will slowly replace Russia as the Western media's main bad guy. Let's just say, because obviously at the moment in Ukraine, Russia it's completing what it's set out to do in the special military operation, and China has offered to step in as to mediate between both, and I'm sure you see yourself, the United States isn't happy, they never want to prolong a war so as to benefit military contractors, would he? That's completely that'd be out of character, wouldn't it?
I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Bakhmut. Also, I think things are going to get interesting west of Kherson. Odessa, Tiraspol, and the rest of Transnistria. I think the things are going to flare up there with Moldova and Romania. And NATO will use that as an excuse to invoke Article 5. And I think it's Article 42, Clause 7 of the Lisbon Treaty that has a similar self-defense clause for EU members. So if they just keep pushing east, either NATO's Article 5 or the European self-defense article is kicked in as soon as there's a clash between Moldova or Romania or any of the EU or NATO states around that region.
Since the beginning of the special military operation, I've been convinced that at some stage the script from Syria will be played out. There will be some sort of false flag, either chemical attack. I was looking for a while like it was going to be a nuclear attack, which was going to be blamed on Russia, you know, and it's quite different from... The one difference to Syria, though, is when the false flag chemical attacks happened in 2017, 2018, Trump bombed...
Was that good?
Sorry?
Was that Duma or Gute?
Gute was 2013, Kanche Kun was 2017, and 2018 was Duma, if I'm correct. Trump bombed Syrian Arab Army positions. Now,
Shayrat.
Yes, they bombed the airbase, and you know, one that was provocative enough as it was, and even one miscalculation, and if they accidentally hit, you know, a Russian airbase, we wouldn't even be talking right now. It would be,
isn't it strange that the conspiracy theorists rushicate him, yet he attacked a Russian ally unprovoked after said Russian ally had agreed to work with him in fighting ISIS. So. And if that's a Russian stooge, I'd hate to see what the Russia-phobes like.
And one thing that's actually overlooked with Trump, he actually lifted Obama-era order to not sell arms to Ukraine, because even the Obama administration said it would be too much of a provocative move. Trump actually lifted that. He sold arms, I believe it was 2017. Just the same with Saudi Arabia. But Trump, I'll be at okay, he wasn't on the level of, you know, Obama, but he didn't start any wars. Now he obviously came close to twice with Iran when he murdered Soleimani and Mohandas. Beforehand, there was a false flag attack in June 2019 on the tanker in the Persian Gulf, and I believe it came out later. He said that 10 minutes before the shooting started, he called off a planned airstrikes on Iranian infrastructure
in retaliation for the unmanned drone.
Which would have immediately started a major regional conflict, which would have easily escalated.
On Soleimani, that Soleimani was traveling through Iraq to do peace negotiations with Saudi Arabia. What does Saudi Arabia do? Give the coordinates and location to the Americans, and that's how that happened. That's one of the reasons I wouldn't trust Saudi Arabia. Plus, they are arming and funding Wahhabis here, there, and everywhere, and that brings me on to Syria. In Ukraine, Al Qaeda and ISIS have gone up there to back up the banderites, like the Ustasha from Croatia. And while we're speaking about Al Qaeda and ISIS, they worked with Mujahideen AICAC to attack Khomeini's mausoleum for the benefit of Western imperialists. So there's a few things that we ought to be concerned about with the spread of Wahhabism and far-right extremism in general. And this is something I cannot for the life of me understand. Okay, I can understand screening people who were fleeing from Syria for Wahhabi beliefs, because that could be a legitimate security threat, but not screening one of the 64,000 Ukrainians for banderism. Yeah, it's not like Nazism has ever been a threat to Ireland before. Oh wait, the Luftwaffe bombed 4 of our major cities. Like, can people not connect the dots, sir? Also, can I ask for what would your opinion be on immigration?
I'm opposed to any form of racism, or discrimination. What's been misinterpreted at the moment in the 26 counties, the vast majority of people will share the same views. They're not racist, they don't discriminate. What they're opposed to is the way the immigration issue is being handled. A local school to me was used to house dozens of men, and there was no clarity on whether the men would be there at the same time that the children would be in the school. So local residents were rightly angry.
Protesting.
And it was made clear by all that they had no issue with anyone fleeing conflict, anyone coming to Ireland to seek employment prospects. It was the way it was being handled. And what I think is lunacy as well is this, they're organised by the far right. It's absolutely no such thing. These are protests. These are local mothers in a WhatsApp group with a handmade signs, and it's... Don't know what happened there. Sorry, man.
Dead on.
But I say that, I think this is lunacy. The protests, the vast majority of people behind these protests, they're local mothers in the likes of Ballymun, Eastwall, Drimnagh. They're all through WhatsApp groups. They're homemade signs. You're hearing this, Lewis. It's all some massive, elaborate MI5, UDA, far right plot. There's no logic into that. The 26th county administration is completely in line with British interests. Like, why would he try? There's no logic. There's no actual logical explanation explained as to why MI5 are trying to implement effectively regime change in the 26th. And the last time they did actually do that was in 1974, when they assisted the UVF in bombing Dublin and Monaghan and killing 34 people. So if they did have some sort of issue with the 26 county government, which they don't, there's no logical
There's other ways to undermine them.
Yeah, they'd be doing a lot more than getting Sandra from Ballymun to have a little protest on WhatsApp. And a great irony is the people, there was a Ireland for All rally through town, and the Socialist Party had a video up in it. There was a pro-regime change in Iran demonstration, and they were supporting that. Now, those are protests where there is intelligence services. Where there is,
and they do have an interest in undermining the Islamic Republic.
And now, if John Bolton admitted on BBC Persia, he dubbed them the Iranian opposition. He says arms are being supplied. Now, look at how that played out in Libya, Syria, and Afghanistan in the 80s. And if the United States is involved, you can take as a given that MI6 is also involved and Mossad are also involved.
Like Operation Ajax.
And
against Mossadegh, it's the same playbook which got them the Shah, which led to the Ayatollahs overthrowing him.
Now, you see, and I think, there's an irony that in Iran at the moment, the same script from Libya and Syria, it's been attempted. I'm not saying it's gone as simply because Iran has been able to defend itself, and Iran recently signed a 25-year cooperation deal with China. Actually, that was in 2021. They've increased ties with Russia as well. So if it got to the stage where, parts of Iran came under control of the armed opposition groups, a serious situation played out. Like, Iran is a massive mountainous country, and a war there, it would have a knock-on effect on the rest of the region. Now, I believe it seems we're at a crossroads now with the approach with the resumption of diplomatic ties between Iran and Saudi Arabia. how the United States will react is very interesting. And the presidential election next year in the United States, I think a key factor will be US involvement in Ukraine. It's going to be similar to 2016, I think. A key factor in that was US involvement in Syria, because at the time, Syria had retaken Aleppo with the assistance of Russia and Iran. You know, there was talks of implementing a no-fly zone, which would have started
for Al Qaeda's benefit.
And Clinton was actually pushing fairly much on, if she got elected, that was what we should implement. Trump, for all his faults, he was saying to step back, and he did to it. Now, obviously, yeah, he bombed Syrian government positions twice. He did actually suspend timber sycamore, which had been
Thank
implemented.
goodness.
Yes, yeah, and that was his. See, my theory is, if you ever notice the mainstream media never ever criticised Trump for bombing Syria.
Sure, he became president that night.
Yeah, I know.
According to them.
You know, the real reason he hated him is because he wasn't completely on board with the neocons. Now, when I say that, people think I'm saying he was a peaceful president. He wasn't. He armed the Saudis in the war in Yemen.
And the bondage in Ukraine, as you mentioned earlier.
He killed Soleimani and Mohandas. Now, one thing I'll say with killing Soleimani and Mohandas, in retaliation, the Ain al-Assad air base in Iraq was bombed by the Iranians. Trump came out, and that could have been the start of a massive war. But Trump, he came out, he didn't do it. So my theory with Soleimani, I do think that was the influence of Jared Kushner would have played a part in that. He's the old Zionist, But it will be interesting next year. I don't think, I genuinely, I do think a Republican will win it unless, there's interference again. The question is whether it'll be Trump or DeSantis, that.
I think the indictments going to increase Trump's lead over DeSantis, and even DeSantis knew better than to say nothing. He came out and condemned the indictment. But on a few things, you were saying about Iran, and basically, if that did light up, I don't think the US would get that far beyond the Arvin route. I think, basically, if they got the Zagros Mountains, the Islamic Republic would basically give them a hiding.
Oh, yes, yeah, it would be absolutely disastrous. And this is even before if China or Russia decided to become involved, and it's very, very likely they would. Like that, it'd be the equivalent of the 1991 Gulf War. That was a
Desert Storm.
Yeah, Saddam had invaded Kuwait.
After Jim Baker told him he could.
And it'd be the equivalent of Russia deciding to, for some reason, to invade Saudi Arabia, which is a key US ally, in both weapons deals, oil, and for its use as a bulwark against Iran. So again, this be very, very interesting now to see how the United States is going to react, and Israel as well. And apparently think, could there be some sort of regime change attempt in Saudi Arabia? Now, one thing I think is going to happen soon is the media is going to pay a lot more attention to the war in Yemen. Say, look, the war that they've been ignoring since 2015.
2015, yes.
Yeah, they'll be paying a lot more. Now, they'll leave out the part that they sold the weapons to Saudi, and told them where to use them as well.
I almost forgot to say there, when you were saying why the establishment hates Trump, as I said to Nils last night, it is for the terrible crime, according to the establishment, of not advancing imperialism enough. That was Trump's big crime.
Yeah.
The horrors.
Mm.
And that was one good thing he did. He withdrew from Somalia. What does Biden do as soon as he gets back in? Oh no, we're putting US troops there for Somalia's lithium. Yeah, because Black Hawk Down, that worked out so well, didn't it?
And with Iran, because Iran has increased ties with China and Russia. You know, I do think what's going on at the moment, the regime change intent, there will be some sort of escalation. I would actually think that there might be something similar to the Maidan Square massacre in 2014. There'd be a Tehran equivalent, you know, where Mossad will, you know, massacre protesters and blame on IRCG. You know,
but they've tried two colour revolutions, the Green Revolution, and there was a recent one. Neither worked.
Yes.
Third time lucky. As if the Revolutionary Guards, the Iranian military, the Basijis, the police, won't be prepared and expecting it. Like, is it just hubris, or is it basically another spin? This time I'll get lucky.
And I think actually they might try with Belarus again soon, because Belarus has actually increased ties with Iran and China. Lukashenko recently visited Beijing. But again, I know they tried it in 2020.
What if their colour revolution is crushed and the violence spills over into Kiev? Like, if they were to try Belarus, Minsk, it's basically just up the road from Kiev. If they want to play that game, and basically the SMO could push the line of defence west.
But yeah, I can definitely. I remember Lukashenko. He did recently say that he has to ensure that what happened in 2020 never happens again, because if
and the KGB, they're just relaxed and laid back about colour revolutions, aren't they? And that's the security service of Belarus, the KGB. Let's cheese off the KGB. What could possibly go wrong?
And if Belarus was to come under the control of a Western-backed government, you'd be in a very precarious situation where all of Russia's western border was composed entirely of
NATO states and EU states.
You know, and the United States, we have a historical precedent to the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, they didn't tolerate, you know, Soviet missiles being placed on the doorstep. So why would Russia be okay with, you know, missiles being all across their western border? You know, there'd be the Baltics, Ukraine. Obviously the Donbass is obviously reunified with Russia since the referendum in September. But effectively, it was a buffer zone. They effectively acted as a buffer zone for 8 years. And if Belarus goes, it would be a very, very precarious situation. But I do think it will happen again in its attempt. It will happen again in Belarus at some stage. I think in Kyrgyzstan as well. And Iran, I think they will handle this current regime. I don't think it will turn into the levels of what we've seen in Libya or Syria. But they'll try again. There could be some other false flag tanker attack. And actually, I wrote a piece on this year. I wrote a piece in this last year. I think it was last July, on Biden's first official visit to Israel. By pure coincidence, a leaked, intelligence document came out saying that Iran had planned to assassinate Trump and Pompeo in retaliation for Soleimani. Now, I'd say they're not pleased what happened. But there's this, because of the coincidental time, and I think there could be a situation where there's a high-level false flag, senior US officials could be attacked or killed in America. The blame could be put in Iran, and we could be in some sort of Iraq-style war, Iraq or Afghanistan-style war. I hope I'm wrong on that issue, but I do think the possibility is there.
I think things could go nuclear over the Donbass and Taiwan and on the alleged assassination plans. The Ayatollah is not foolhardy. He knows that would get a response, as tempting as it is, I don't think the Iranians would fall into a US trap like that. But can I ask you? Can I ask you what are your thoughts on gender ideology in Ireland? I don't understand why the establishment needs to profit off pushing this on the children. Like, what's it? 1,133,903 people in the Free State identify as trans or non-binary. That's according to the British Medical Journal, and according to the Éire. Sorry,
1 million people identify in the 26 counties.
1,133,903 in the 26 counties, identify as trans or non-binary, according to the British Medical Journal. They could be exaggerating that number, but the trend is clear, is increasing, not decreasing. But the Irish Times reported that the HSE approved youth gender surgeries on children in Catholic, what was once Catholic influenced Ireland. And on another social issue, 26 abortions in the Free State during 2014. That number went up to 6,666 in 2019. But as you were saying earlier, how Liberals can be dismissive of working class people with concerns. Yeah, we were dismissed and derided as far right extremists. We protested against but the counter protest, their hooked crosses and their Roman salutes, didn't have anything to say about that. And it's like the hypocrisy. If you have a socially conservative, or even like myself, I say Ireland for the Irish because there are 100 million in our diaspora, many of European, African, or Asian in appearance, but they all have ties back to the Emerald Isle. Now, with a world of 100 million Irish people, why do I have to make Ireland less Irish? It's a bit like connotation, but there are people like me, all the names of the Banderites, they're national liberators. It's the same thing. The choice testers. Do you not agree?
Sorry, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So I don't know. The sound kept on going there before the video went. If you look actually in going back to what we talked about earlier on with the Great Reset, gender ideology is actually listed as a key part of it. I think the intentions is to, create confusion, to create vulnerable people, more malleable, easily influenced people. That's make them more dependent on government, the government corporate access. And I always believe that adults can identify whichever way they choose to be teaching I won't say teaching, to be exposing young children to the idea that if a boy can be a girl or a girl can be a boy. Sorry, I thought that went there. You know, it's demonic, and some like there's stuff being taught in school at the moment, being
exposed.
Yeah, in school at the moment, there's books with sexually explicit material that should not be shown to children. Children need to be protected, you know, from stuff that they're not able to handle. Like they're being exposed to absolute filth in schools at the moment, and
Graphic material. Let's call it what it is.
Really logical is a step-by-step process to legitimize perversion. You know, it's if you look what happened, if you look at the beat. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. But go ahead. You were saying that teachers were exposing pornographic content to children.
The only, like, the logical explanation is that there is a campaign to legitimise perversion, you know, to make it acceptable in society, and it really is nothing short of demonic that they're targeting children in this way, you know,
and demons in the Bible refer to themselves as they, them.
Because even like if you look at the BBC, like what happened with Savile, like people could not have been unaware of what he was up to. So it shows that at a high level in society there was a paedophile element involved, and clearly something similar is happening today. There is this campaign to bring perversion, to legitimate normalise perversion in society, and they're targeting children. It's totally demonic.
When you normalise the killing of children, basically child abuse is not that big a step. When you go from killing children to perverting children, basically we see where this is going to end up.
And on the issue of gender ideology, I believe that if someone is genuinely mentally ill, where they think that they're in the wrong body, they need treatment. They need proper treatment. The worst thing is to tell them, you really are in the wrong body. You know, you're a man really, or you're a woman really, when they're the opposite gender. You know, it's like you wouldn't, like an anorexic person, you wouldn't tell them, oh, you are overweight really. You need, so a similar approach should be taken, and this. It's absolutely nothing short of lunacy, you know, to be telling young children.
And liberals will call opponents of gender ideology far right, but they won't call the Banderites far right. It's hypocritical, and I would say that men are naturally ordered toward impregnation, and women are naturally ordered towards gestation. This isn't complicated. In fact, a few years ago, everyone would have been ubiquitous in agreeing with those statements. Unanimous. Sorry, I said ubiquitous. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's all a part, you know, of I suppose the ultimate aim of consumer capitalism. Rather than see people as humans, we're all basically a slave class, you know, where
labour and consumers.
You know, we're stripped of all individualism, where our only purpose is, you know, to work and to consume. You know, it's they say there's some countries, instead of mother and father, it's parent one and parent two. You know, it's part of globalist design, you know,
breaking up the traditional family. And also, big pharmaceutical companies make billions off chemical castration, and a lot of hospitals in America make millions, if not hundreds of millions, off surgical sterilization. Where does it end?
Yeah. Obviously there's a lot of money as well, and it's I think it's morally wrong to be telling vulnerable teenagers who might have gender dysmorphia to say, oh no, you really are a man or you really are a woman. It's a society, that's at fault. Because it sets a precedent on where does it end? We'll have people saying that you identify as cats, dogs, etc. And at the moment, in our book, whether one agrees with his religious views or any of his other views, I think he's effectively a bulwark between Ireland completely fall into this lunacy. A lot of people who never really paid attention for it, they're standing up now and they're saying, well, hold on a minute. I don't agree also, but this stuff shouldn't be taught to children, and he's shining a light on it, and that's with the establishment despise him. And a lot of people, they're noticing the way that he's being treated. It's bullying, the way they're treating him and his family. And it's, he's probably one of the, I actually would say he's the number one hate figure in the 26th county. The establishment now, I say that's going
I was about to say, basically, Leinster House is full of hate figures. Why pick on the one opposing the establishment?
Yeah. Because I do think, he has drawn a lot of people stand up saying, oh, well, children shouldn't be taught this and all, So,
so they can't teach Gaelic and Irish history, but they can teach gender ideology. Yeah. I'm calling both fine excrement on that.
Yeah, school has changed a lot,
And as someone said from, I believe he's from Kerry, but he lives in Cork. He said to me at the Belfast Rally for Life, when I was saying, does abortion, and you can add gender affirmation, be that chemical castration or gender or surgical sterilisation. The HSE has a limited budget, and that's before we talk about the increase in executives' pay. But as this gentleman from Munster told me, there's no waiting lists for abortions.
Yeah.
It's funny that, but there's waiting lists for medically necessary operations and treatments. How does that work? Where are the people who would be opposing Leinster House and other things? Where are they? And why aren't Republicans especially standing up, and socialists? Did they not care about the working class about 5 minutes ago?
It will be very, very interesting to see what the reaction will be if Enoch Burke is sent to prison again over the fines. Because, will the left wing in Ireland, will they come out and basically support the courts and the police and the judiciary?
Oh, they'll put like for the blue shirts as always. Same old story since 1921, and that's another thing. Fine Gael weren't around then. Come in and yell, Fine Gael, it's the same blue shirt party that I despise for putting my grandfather in a concentration camp at Newbridge during the Civil War. I love to differentiate. It's all Leinster House blue shirt bullshit. That's, and I think you have a similar view as well.
I'll be very interested because I believe he's near €25,000 in fines. I think has been racked up, so it's a sizable amount. And
is that not a third of the average income in the Free State?
Yeah, it would be. Nearly be an entire income. Actually, I think the average income is 36,000 in the 26 counties. I'm not sure. So it's a sizable amount, and reaction. It'll be very interesting to see if he's sent back to prison. What will the left wing say? And it's I think one of the biggest ironies is the left in Ireland, they'll condemn Enoch Burke, then they'll also employ Palestinian.
And they'll say fuck. I was about to say they'll say fuck all about the six.
Oh yes, that's true. And it's not wrong that they fly Palestinian flags, but I'm just wondering, did he think in Palestine?
There's an apartheid state up the road and an occupation.
Oh yeah, definitely. And a strange thing, a lot of the Palestinian solidarity campaigners, a lot of them are actually on the same side as Israel on the likes of Syria and Iran. Like a lot of them are supporting, the current regime change operation in Iran, which Israel's anywhere behind in Syria as well. But,
even though the Zionist state occupies Al Jolin illegally and has done so since the 70s. And that's something I like about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. They don't recognize the Zionist state. They recognize Palestine, and they recognize Al Jolin as Syrian, as it should be. But this is another thing about the multi-poles and the so-called anti-imperialist estate or anti-imperialist estate or states is, where is their support for Ireland and its liberation?
Yes, yeah, that's true.
And the Islamic Republic of Iran, they deserve credit. Only the Islamic Republic would make the British Embassy have an address of Bobby Sands Street. There is no other example in the world like it.
Yes, yeah.
Well, somewhere in America changed Margaret Thatcher Plaza to Bobby Sands Plaza. Yeah, how many years later?
Yeah, commended for that, most definitely.
But do you not think it's strange that the anti-imperialist states do not give more support to Ireland, given that we have discussed the Western intelligence services supporting, Banderites in Ukraine, colour revolutions in Hong Kong, anti-lockdown protests, and saber rattling over semiconductors in Taiwan, but they never basically send the boomerang back, and it just seems illogical. Go ahead.
Well, I've noticed in a lot of international activists, they seem to be under the impression that Provisional Sinn Féin is still some sort of, that's what I've noticed. Now I've written pieces that have been published worldwide, so I'm hoping that the message is getting out there, that now it's, Ireland is still occupied, Provisional Sinn Féin are, complicit in it, they're not a revolutionary movement by any means. I starting to see signs, of shifts. A lot of international activists have noticed, they're not the revolutionary party that they make out to be,
Yeah. But should the Republican movement not be more vocal about Provisional Sinn Féin's treachery? I feel like since Ruairi went, God rest his soul, they've been almost reticent to attack Provisional Sinn Féin. And you're like, they should have anger at them for the 1986 Free State decision at the very least. Never mind all the excrement that has emanated from it. Do you not think so?
Oh, definitely. The hypocrisy that either Mary Lou or Michelle O'Neill, or probably both of them actually will probably meet with Charles Windsor next month. And they'll likely meet with Biden as well, because the point of Biden's visit is to mark the 25th anniversary of the GFA. So, that will actually, a lot of, international activists will hopefully see that and realize, they're not the revolutionary group I thought they were. Like, here they are meeting the US president and the British king.
The international crowd said nothing when McGuinness and with Peter Robinson was kissing her backside.
Yeah.
So maybe you're putting a little too much faith in them. But is there anything you'd like to say before we finish off this discussion?
Comes, let me think. I don't want to say nothing at all. I don't want to say something that what is coming up?
Easter, the visits.
I suppose. I suppose I could just really reiterate what I said. I think there'll be a massive normalisation push in April over the visits of both Biden and Windsor, and I think they might actually take it as an opportunity to attack Brexit as well. They'll say that, Brexit.
For goodness sake.
Yeah, I do. Look,
they weren't so concerned about East-West relations during the protocol. For once.
There will be a few digs put in to say, look how great it is in the occupied six now. Everyone gets on great, and this that's it really. And actually, my point is, I think since Brexit was voted for, I've noticed there's been a lot more mainstream voices speaking in support of Irish reunification. Now, not in the sense
to bring us into the EU, yes,
exactly. Now, not in the sense of Ireland reunified, where Éire is implemented and we've control over our own resources, and we've sovereignty.
No, a 32-county free state.
Yeah,
that's basically what the GFA and Sunningdale was there to do.
It's their way of getting, back at Britain for voting.
Having the audacity to vote their own way.
And in spite of the fact that Britain is completely aligned with globalist interests on, if from Ukraine to COVID, but we can't let them get away with voting for Brexit. So we want the 32-county World Economic Forum of Ireland. So that's one thing I've noticed. There's been a lot of mainstream voices. And I do think there will be digs put in at Brexit, but the main thing will be normalisation. Will be the main thing of the visits between Biden and Windsor. Dig at Brexit, and with the Biden visit in particular, there'll be a push for Ireland's place in the world. Let's just say.
My goodness!
To join NATO. That's the way.
So Commonwealth and NATO. Goody, that's something to look forward to. But it's been half a century since Sunningdale. It has failed. Quarter of a century since it was updated for the Good Friday Agreement. And on them saying, look how great things in the six. Go around working class nationalist communities, go around working class unionist communities, and tell me things have improved. They have not improved. Workers still struggle all over Ulster, whether in the Free State part or not. And I'm fed up of anti-Republicans pretending that we're crazy when they're gaslighting us. When you can go to Westway, go to Turf Lodge, go to Ballymurphy, go to Ardown, go to Sandy Road, go to Tuckmona, go to the Shankill. You can't gaslight people, and that's just one part of the city. And the city is just one part of the county and one part of the province, and this is replicated not only throughout the 6 counties but throughout the Free State. Like, there are areas like that in Dublin, Cork, and even Galway. And Limerick. How did I forget Limerick? But we could go on all day. Anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for this, Gavin, and I hope to have you on again.
Thank you. Go to Mila Monaco, Cara.
Fauci Road, Hara.
August, August, Slán.
EOI and Slangafoy, or August Slangafoy.
We're back on Duolingo.
Michael O'Reilly.